welcome back to the channel. Today we're sharing a deeply personal story sent to us anonymously about a life-altering experience. These are real stories, real emotions, shared to help us all understand the complexities of relationships and life. Before we begin, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And for our returning viewers, your likes and shares mean the world and truly help us bring more stories like these to you. Thank you for your support, and now let's listen to today's story. It feels strange, doesn't it? To start at the beginning, knowing how it all ends. Like watching a movie in reverse, where you see the wreckage first, and then you slowly rewind back to the moment before the storm hit, before the calm was shattered. But maybe that's the only way to truly understand how far you've fallen, to appreciate the height from which you plummeted. So let's go back. Let's rewind to the before. Before the phone call. Before the man's voice, a stranger's voice, ripped apart the fabric of my life. Before the words he uttered echoed in my mind, a constant, haunting refrain. Before the truth, raw and ugly, laid bare everything I thought I knew. Let's go back to Sarah. My Sarah. We met in that chaotic whirlwind of youth, at a time when the world felt like it was spinning just for us. A coffee shop, rain streaming down the window panes, a shared laugh over a spilled latte. Cliched maybe, but real. For me, undeniably real. She had this way of looking at you like she saw something others missed, something good. And God, I wanted to be good for her. Our early years were bathed in that golden light of new love. Remember that feeling? When every touch is electric, every conversation an adventure, every day a promise of forever. We were inseparable. We explored the city hand in hand, discovered hidden cafes, walked along moonlit beaches, whispered secrets under starry skies. We built a world, just the two of us, brick by brick, dream by dream. Our apartment, small but cozy, became our sanctuary. Filled with mismatched furniture, thrift store finds, and the comforting aroma of her baking. Sunday mornings were slow, lazy affairs, filled with pancakes and laughter, newspapers spread across the floor, the soft murmur of her voice reading aloud. Evenings were for movies, cuddled on the couch, her head resting on my chest, the world outside fading away. We talked about everything and nothing. Dreams, fears, hopes, silly childhood memories, philosophical debates that stretched late into the night. She knew me, truly knew me, in a way no one else ever had. And I thought I knew her too. Her passions, her vulnerabilities, the little quirks that made her uniquely Sarah. The way her nose crinkled when she laughed, the thoughtful pause before she answered a question, the fierce determination in her eyes when she set her mind to something. Marriage felt like the most natural progression, the next step in a dance we'd been learning since that rainy day in the coffee shop. It wasn't a grand, dramatic proposal. It was quiet, intimate, over dinner at home. Just us, the soft glow of candlelight, and the unspoken understanding that this was meant to be. The wedding was small, personal, filled with the people who mattered most. Her smile that day, radiant, breathtaking. It's an image etched into my memory, a precious jewel I still sometimes try to polish, to bring back its lost shine. The first few years of marriage were, honestly, bliss. We navigated the little bumps of life together, supporting each other, laughing at the absurdities, facing challenges as a team. We bought a house, planted a garden, adopted a clumsy, lovable dog we named Max. Life felt complete, content, secure. I looked at her across the dinner table, at her sleeping peacefully beside me in bed, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was it. This was happiness. This was forever. We made plans. Travel dreams, career goals, maybe even children someday. We talked about growing old together, rocking on a porch swing, watching the sunsets, our hands intertwined, our love a quiet, enduring flame. We were building a life, a future, a legacy. Or so I thought. Looking back now, it all seems like a beautiful dream, a perfect illusion. Was it real? Were those smiles genuine? Was that love as deep and true as I believed? Or was I just blind? Complacent? Perhaps I was so caught up in the fairy tale, so convinced of our unbreakable bond, that I failed to see the subtle cracks appearing beneath the surface. Perhaps the happiness wasn't as sustainable as I thought. Perhaps I was too busy basking in the sunlight to notice the approaching storm clouds gathering on the horizon. And maybe, just maybe, that's where it all started to unravel. Maybe the seeds of doubt, the whispers of change, were there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for me to notice. Waiting for me to wake up. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Like the slow creep of dawn, barely noticeable until you realize the darkness has begun to recede. It wasn't one dramatic event, one earth-shattering argument. It was a collection of small things, subtle shifts in the rhythm of our days, in the melody of our connection. Looking back, it's like trying to piece together fragments of a shattered mirror, each shard reflecting a tiny, distorted piece of the truth. It started with silences. Not the comfortable silences we used to share, the companionable quiet where words weren't necessary. These were different. Heavy. Loaded with unspoken thoughts, with an invisible wall slowly rising between us. Conversations became functional. Logistical. Discussions about groceries, bills, household chores. The deeper talks, the heart-to-hearts that used to stretch for hours, dwindled. Faded. Like a radio signal weakening, losing clarity, until all that's left is static. She became more distant. Physically, emotionally. At night, in bed, she'd turn away, her back to me, a silent barrier erected in the space that was once our shared haven. Intimacy became infrequent. Forced. Lacking the spark, the passion, the genuine desire that used to ignite between us. It felt like going through the motions, a perfunctory act rather than a heartfelt connection. And each time it happened, or rather didn't happen, a little piece of me withered inside. Her routine changed. She started staying later at work, claiming new projects, demanding deadlines. I understood ambition, drive, career focus. I admired it in her. But the frequency increased, the late nights became the norm, and the explanations felt vague. Less detailed. Less convincing. When I asked about her day, the answers were short, dismissive, lacking the usual enthusiasm she used to have when sharing her work life. It felt like she was holding back, editing herself, carefully curating what she revealed. Her phone became an extension of her hand. Always within reach, always face down when she wasn't using it. She'd jump if it buzzed, her eyes darting to the screen, a flicker of something guarded, secretive. I'd catch glimpses of her texting, smiling at her phone, but when I entered the room, the smile would vanish, the phone would be quickly put away. It wasn't that I was inherently suspicious, but the change was noticeable, undeniable. It felt like she was living a part of her life that was increasingly separate from me. Her mood became unpredictable, irritable, snappish. Small things that wouldn't have bothered her before would now trigger outbursts of frustration, sharp words directed at me, often seemingly out of proportion to the situation. I tried to be understanding, patient. I told myself she was stressed, overworked, going through a phase. But beneath the surface, a seed of unease began to sprout. I tried to talk to her. Gently, tentatively. Is everything okay, Sarah? You seem different lately. Is something bothering you? Each time I was met with deflection. Dismissal. I'm fine, she'd say, her voice flat, her eyes avoiding mine. Just tired. Work is crazy busy. Or, you're imagining things. Everything is fine. The more I tried to connect, the more she seemed to pull away, creating a chasm between us that grew wider with each passing day. I started to feel lost, confused, anxious, like I was losing my grip on something precious, something fundamental to my happiness. I questioned myself. Was I being paranoid? Was I overreacting? Was I imagining things, seeing problems where none existed? I wanted to believe her reassurances, to trust her words. But the gut feeling, that persistent gnawing unease, wouldn't go away. It was like a low hum in the background, a constant whisper of doubt that I couldn't quite silence. I tried to ignore the signs, to rationalize them away, to believe that everything would go back to normal, that this was just a temporary blip in our otherwise perfect life. I clung to the memories of our happy years, to the image of the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. I desperately wanted to believe in the forever we had promised each other. But the signs kept piling up. Subtle yet persistent. Like drops of water slowly eroding a stone, each one seemingly insignificant on its own, but collectively powerful enough to wear down even the strongest foundations. And deep down, a cold dread began to settle in my stomach. A fear that something was fundamentally wrong. A fear that the woman I loved was slipping away from me, and I was powerless to stop it. A fear that the beautiful life we had built together was starting to crumble, piece by piece, right before my eyes. And the silence, those heavy, loaded silences, were becoming deafening. They were screaming a truth I wasn't yet ready to hear. The unease solidified into suspicion. It was a slow, agonizing process, like watching a shadow lengthen and darken, slowly consuming the light. The initial confusion and anxiety morphed into a gnawing, persistent doubt, a relentless question mark hanging over everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The subtle signs, those whispers of change, now screamed in my ears, demanding attention, refusing to be ignored. The late nights at work became more frequent, more Elaborate. Business trips started appearing on her calendar, weekend getaways to conferences and cities hours away. She'd pack meticulously, her movements brisk, efficient, almost rehearsed. The goodbyes became quick, perfunctory, a peck on the cheek, a hurried, "Love you, see you Sunday," before she'd disappear out the door, leaving me standing there, feeling increasingly hollow and disconnected. Her explanations, once vague, now became even more evasive. Details were scarce, stories inconsistent, timelines blurry. When I asked about specific meetings, colleagues, or conference events, she'd brush me off, saying I wouldn't understand, that it was work stuff, too complicated to explain. The lack of transparency, the deliberate vagueness, felt like a deliberate attempt to keep me in the dark. And the darkness, I was beginning to realize, was where secrets thrived. The phone. It remained her constant companion, a silent, enigmatic third party in our dwindling relationship. The hushed whispers in the other room, the furtive glances at the screen, the quickly deleted messages, it was all becoming too obvious to ignore. My mind started conjuring scenarios, dark possibilities I desperately tried to push away, but they kept creeping back, insidious and persistent. The thought of infidelity, it was like a cold blade twisting in my gut. A betrayal so profound, so devastating, it felt almost unimaginable. Sarah? My Sarah? The woman I had built my life with, the woman I trusted implicitly? It couldn't be. It just couldn't be. But the whispers of doubt were growing louder, the evidence, though circumstantial, was starting to accumulate, forming a disturbing pattern. I started to feel desperate, driven by a need to know, to unravel the mystery, to either confirm my worst fears or, please God, to prove them wrong. I began to look for evidence. Subtly at first, almost apologetically, as if I was betraying her trust just by considering the possibility. A quick glance at her phone when she left it unattended, a casual scroll through her call history, nothing. She was careful. Too careful. The guilt gnawed at me. Snooping, spying, it wasn't who I was. It felt like a violation, a betrayal of the trust that was already crumbling. But the need to know, the agonizing uncertainty was overwhelming. I was trapped in a torturous limbo, suspended between denial and suspicion, and the only way to escape, it seemed, was to confront the truth, however painful it might be. I checked her emails. A quick, furtive search, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands trembling slightly. Deleted items, sent folder, inbox. Nothing overtly suspicious. More work emails, travel confirmations, mundane daily correspondence. Again, she was meticulous. Or perhaps I was just looking in the wrong places. The internet history. A more invasive step, a deeper dive into her private world. Browser history, search queries, websites visited, mostly work-related articles, online shopping, recipes. Nothing that immediately screamed, affair. But then I noticed something. A pattern of deleted browsing history, cleared regularly, almost systematically. What was she hiding? What was she so afraid of me seeing? The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a disturbing picture. The distance, the secrecy, the evasiveness, the late nights, the business trips, the guarded phone, the deleted history. Each piece on its own might be explained away, rationalized, dismissed. But collectively they painted a different story. A story of deception. A story of betrayal. A story that was breaking my heart even before I knew the full truth. I felt like a detective in a noir film, following a trail of breadcrumbs, each clue leading me deeper into a labyrinth of lies and secrets. The initial reluctance, the guilt, the desire to deny, they were all fading, replaced by a steely resolve to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I had to know. For my own sanity, for my own peace of mind, I had to know. And the deeper I dug, the more convinced I became that my suspicions were not unfounded. That the beautiful facade of our marriage was crumbling, revealing a dark, ugly truth hidden beneath the surface. And the fear, the cold, gnawing fear, was that the truth would be far worse than I could ever imagine. The search for truth became an all-consuming obsession. It was like a relentless itch I couldn't scratch, a burning question that demanded an answer, even if the answer was one I dreaded. I felt like I was living a double life. On the surface, I was still the husband, going through the motions of daily life, pretending everything was normal. But beneath the facade, I was a detective, a spy in my own home, meticulously gathering evidence, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that was slowly revealing a devastating picture. I started paying closer attention to her schedule, her comings and goings. I'd casually ask about her plans, her meetings, her travel arrangements, listening intently to her responses, searching for inconsistencies, for cracks in her carefully constructed narrative. Her stories became more elaborate, more convoluted, and the more she tried to convince me, the less convincing she became. It was like watching a performer on a tightrope, each step more precarious than the last, the inevitable fall looming closer. The business trips. Those were the focal points of my suspicion. The weekend conferences, the out-of-town meetings, they seemed too conveniently timed, too perfectly aligned to create opportunities for something else. I started researching the conferences she claimed to be attending. Online searches, conference websites, lists of speakers and attendees. I was looking for anything that didn't quite add up. And then I found it. A small discrepancy, a tiny detail that didn't fit. One of the conferences she claimed to have attended, the dates didn't match her travel itinerary. She said she was gone Friday to Sunday, but the conference program clearly stated it was a Saturday and Sunday event. A small inconsistency, perhaps easily explained away. But in the context of everything else, it felt like a significant crack in her alibi. My heart pounded in my chest. Was this it? Was this the proof I was looking for? Or was I grasping at straws, desperate to find something to confirm my suspicions? I needed more. I needed concrete evidence. Circumstantial evidence was not enough. I needed to know beyond any shadow of a doubt what was really going on. The phone. I knew the answer lay hidden within that device. It was her confidant, her secret keeper, the silent witness to her deception. But it was always locked, always guarded, always out of reach. Until one morning. She was in the shower, her phone charging on the nightstand, unlocked. It was a fleeting opportunity, a split-second window of vulnerability. My conscience screamed at me. This was wrong. This was a violation of privacy, a betrayal of trust. But the need to know, the burning curiosity was overwhelming. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the phone, my heart racing. And then I reached for it. The messages. That's where I started. Text messages, WhatsApp, Messenger. I scrolled through her recent conversations, my eyes scanning the screen, searching for keywords, for names I didn't recognize, for anything that would confirm my fears. Most of the messages were mundane, everyday exchanges with friends, family, colleagues. But then, buried deep within a messaging app one barely recognized, I found it. A conversation. A long, intimate, emotionally charged conversation. With a number saved under a generic, unassuming name. But the content. The words leaped off the screen, searing themselves into my brain. Terms of endearment, passionate declarations, intimate details, plans for secret meetings, stolen moments. It was all there, laid bare, undeniable. The truth, raw and ugly, staring back at me from the cold, impersonal screen of her phone. The name. I recognized it. Or rather, I vaguely recognized it. It was a name she had mentioned in passing, a colleague from work, someone she had described as, just a friend. Just a friend. The words mocked me, the irony twisting like a knife in my gut. Just a friend who was professing his love, who was planning secret rendezvous, who was intimately involved in my wife's life. The evidence was irrefutable. The truth was undeniable. My suspicions were confirmed. And the confirmation hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for air, my world spinning out of control. The pain was immediate, sharp, visceral. A deep, agonizing ache in my chest, a hollow emptiness in my stomach, a crushing weight on my soul. I put the phone back, my hands shaking, my body numb. I stumbled out of the bedroom, feeling like I was walking through a dream, a nightmare. The shower was still running, the sound of water a mocking reminder of the cleansing I desperately needed, but could never achieve. I sat on the couch, staring blankly ahead, the words from the messages echoing in my mind, a constant, tormenting loop. The guilt of snooping, the anxiety of searching, the loneliness of suspicion. They were all overshadowed by the crushing weight of the truth. I had found what I was looking for. I had followed the trail to its bitter end. And the discovery, the irrefutable evidence, had shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about the woman I loved. The beautiful dream was over. The illusion was shattered. And the reality, the cold, harsh reality of betrayal, was more devastating than I could have ever imagined. The world tilted on its axis. Everything I had believed, everything I had held dear, suddenly felt unstable, precarious, like it could crumble into dust at any moment. The irrefutable evidence, those damning messages, had ripped away the veil of illusion, exposing the raw, painful truth of my reality. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't just a gut feeling. It was concrete, undeniable, staring me in the face, mocking my naivete, shattering my trust. So, that was the first wave. A numbing, disorienting shock that spread through my body, leaving me feeling detached, unreal, like I was watching this unfold from a distance, as if it were happening to someone else. My mind struggled to process the information, to reconcile the image of my wife, the woman I loved, with the reality of her betrayal. It was like two conflicting realities colliding, shattering against each other, leaving me caught in the wreckage. Bang. Sharp, agonizing pain that followed the shock, piercing through the numbness, tearing at my heart, my soul. It was a pain unlike anything I had ever experienced before. A pain that went beyond physical hurt, reaching into the deepest recesses of my being, a pain that felt like a fundamental part of me was being ripped away. The pain of betrayal, the pain of loss, the pain of shattered trust, all intertwined, a suffocating, unbearable weight. Anger. A slow-burning, white-hot anger that started to simmer beneath the surface, fueled by the injustice, the deceit, the sheer audacity of her betrayal. Anger at her, for lying, for deceiving, for shattering our vows, for destroying everything we had built together. Anger at myself for being so blind, so trusting, so foolish to believe in the fairy tale, to ignore the signs, to be so utterly, completely duped. Disbelief. Even with the evidence staring me in the face, a part of me still couldn't fully accept it. It felt surreal, impossible, like a cruel joke, a twisted nightmare I would soon wake up from. My mind kept trying to find loopholes, alternative explanations, anything to soften the blow, to make the truth less devastating. But there were no loopholes, no alternative explanations. The messages were clear, unambiguous, irrefutable. The affair was real. My wife had cheated on me. And my world was crumbling around me. The collapse of trust. That was perhaps the most devastating consequence. Trust, that fragile, precious foundation upon which our relationship was built, shattered into a million pieces. How could I ever trust her again? How could I ever believe anything she said? Every memory, every moment, every word exchanged between us, now felt tainted, poisoned by the knowledge of her deceit. Was anything real? Were those smiles genuine? Were those declarations of love sincere? Or was it all just a carefully constructed performance, a web of lies woven around me, while she lived a secret life, a double life, right under my nose? The weight of the truth was suffocating. It felt like I was drowning, gasping for air, being pulled under by the undertow of betrayal. I wandered through the house like a ghost, aimless, lost, disconnected from everything around me. The familiar surroundings, the objects that once held so much meaning, now felt alien, cold, devoid of warmth. Our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the life we had built, and the life that was now irrevocably broken. Sleep offered no escape. Restless nights, haunted by nightmares, by images of her with him, by the echoes of those damning messages. Even in my dreams, the betrayal followed me, a relentless tormentor, refusing to let me find peace, even in the sanctuary of sleep. The days were no better. A constant fog of pain and confusion, a struggle to function, to focus, to simply get through the motions of daily life. Eating felt like a chore, work felt meaningless, even simple tasks became monumental efforts. I felt isolated, utterly alone in my pain. Surrounded by people, yet completely disconnected, unable to share the depth of my anguish, the enormity of my betrayal. It was a secret I carried within me, a heavy burden weighing me down, isolating me from the world, from everyone I knew. I wanted to scream, to rage, to lash out, but I was paralyzed by the shock, by the pain, by the sheer magnitude of what had happened. Acceptance. That was the hardest part. Accepting the harsh, brutal reality that my wife, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. Accepting that the life we had built together, the future we had planned, was now irrevocably changed, possibly destroyed. Accepting that the fairy tale was over, and the reality was a painful, desolate wasteland. It felt like a death. The death of a dream, the death of a relationship, the death of the person I thought I was. And in the face of such profound loss, all I could feel was a gaping emptiness, a hollow ache, and the crushing weight of a truth I desperately wished was not real. The confrontation. It was inevitable, hanging over me like a dark cloud, a looming storm I knew I couldn't avoid. The days after discovering the evidence were a blur of pain, shock, and a growing sense of dread. I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo, this suffocating silence, this charade of normalcy while my world was crumbling from within. I had to confront her. I had to hear it from her own lips. I had to face the truth head-on, however agonizing it might be. The day I decided to confront her started like any other. A forced smile, a perfunctory good morning, a strained silence over breakfast. But beneath the surface, my heart was pounding, my nerves were frayed, my stomach was churning with anxiety. I waited for the right moment, for her to be home, for us to be alone, for a space where we could finally tear down the walls and face the wreckage. She came home from work, tired, distracted, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I waited until after dinner, after the mundane routines of the day had been completed, until we were sitting in the living room, the silence between us thick and heavy. And then I spoke. My voice was surprisingly calm, almost detached, betraying none of the turmoil raging within me. "Sarah," I said, my eyes fixed on hers, searching for any flicker of guilt, any hint of remorse. "We need to talk." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, a flicker of something, apprehension? Unease? Crossed her face. "Talk about what?" she asked, her voice wary, guarded. "About us," I said, choosing my words carefully, trying to maintain a semblance of composure, even as my insides were trembling. "About everything." She shifted uncomfortably on the couch, avoiding my gaze. "Everything is fine, isn't it?" she said, her voice too casual, too dismissive, betraying her own nervousness. "Work is just hectic lately." "No, Sarah," I said, my voice hardening slightly, the calmness starting to crack. "Everything is not fine. And we both know it." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of defiance and fear. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, the denial still clinging to her words. And then I laid it all out. Not angrily, not accusingly, but calmly, methodically, presenting the evidence, the pieces of the puzzle I had painstakingly assembled. The late nights, the business trips, the phone, the deleted history, the inconsistencies in her stories, the messages. I didn't need to spell it out. She knew. She could see it in my eyes, in my voice, in the unwavering certainty of my words. As I spoke, her composure started to crumble. The defiance faded, replaced by a look of resignation? Defeat? Her eyes welled up with tears, her shoulders slumped, the carefully constructed facade finally collapsing. "Sarah," I said again, my voice softening slightly despite the pain still tearing at me. "Tell me the truth. Please. Just tell me the truth." The tears started to flow freely now, streaming down her face. She didn't speak for a long moment, her silence deafening, confirming everything I already knew, everything I had dreaded. And then, finally, the confession. Barely audible at first, choked with sobs, but the words came tumbling out in a rush of guilt, regret, and a strange, almost desperate need for absolution. "It happened," she whispered, her voice broken, her eyes filled with shame. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to. It just did." The words hung in the air, heavy, suffocating, confirming my worst fears, shattering the last vestiges of hope. "With him?" I asked, the name of the man from the messages barely escaping my lips, a bitter taste on my tongue. She nodded, her head bowed, unable to meet my gaze. "Yes," she sobbed. "With him." The confession. It was both a relief and a devastation. Relief to finally have the truth out in the open, to no longer be living in a fog of suspicion and doubt. But devastation because the truth was so much more painful, so much more destructive than I had ever imagined. The tears streamed down my face now too, mirroring hers, a shared grief, a shared loss, but for vastly different reasons. Disappointment, sorrow, anger, all swirling within me, a chaotic maelstrom of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand answers, to understand the why, the how, the when. But in that moment all I could feel was a profound sense of loss. The loss of trust, the loss of innocence, the loss of the future we had planned together. The questions came later. The whys, the hows, the endless inquiries into the details of the affair. But in that initial confrontation, in that moment of raw, painful confession, all that mattered was the truth. The truth that had shattered my world, the truth that had broken my heart, the truth that had irrevocably changed everything. And in the silence that followed, punctuated only by our sobs, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The turning point had arrived. And the path ahead was shrouded in darkness, uncertainty, and unimaginable pain. Heartbreak. The word feels inadequate, almost clinical, to describe the tsunami of emotions that engulfed me after the confession. It wasn't just a broken heart. It was a shattered soul, a fractured spirit, a complete and utter devastation of my inner landscape. It felt like every fiber of my being was ripped apart, leaving behind a raw, gaping wound that refused to heal. The mental consequences were immediate and profound. My mind became a battlefield, a constant war zone of thoughts, memories and recriminations. Images of her with him, scenarios of their secret rendezvous, replays of her lies and deceptions, They haunted me relentlessly, playing on repeat, refusing to be silenced. Obsessive thoughts, intrusive images, a constant mental torment that left me exhausted, drained, unable to focus on anything else. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Restless nights, tossing and turning, plagued by nightmares, by vivid dreams of betrayal and loss. Even when I managed to drift off, sleep was shallow, fragmented, offering no respite, no healing. I'd wake up feeling more exhausted than when I went to bed, the weight of heartbreak pressing down on me, suffocating me even in the darkness of night. My appetite vanished. Food became tasteless, unappetizing, a chore to be endured rather than enjoyed. Meals became solitary, silent affairs, the emptiness on the plate mirroring the emptiness within me. I lost weight, my clothes hung loosely on my frame, my physical body mirroring the depletion of my emotional state. Emotionally, I was a wreck. A roller coaster of pain, anger, sadness, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. Sorrow washed over me in waves, unpredictable, overwhelming, leaving me weeping uncontrollably at the most unexpected moments. Anger flared up suddenly, a burning rage directed at her, at him, at myself, at the unfairness of it all. Loneliness enveloped me, a suffocating isolation even when surrounded by people. It felt like no one could truly understand the depth of my pain, the enormity of my loss. Physically, the heartbreak manifested in tangible ways. Chest pains, palpitations, headaches, muscle aches, a constant low-grade physical discomfort that mirrored my emotional distress. My energy levels plummeted, simple tasks became Herculean efforts, motivation evaporated, leaving me feeling listless, apathetic, disconnected from the world around me. The haunting. That's what it felt like. Haunted by the memories of our happy years, now tainted by the knowledge of her deceit. Haunted by the image of her smile, now replaced by the image of her in his arms. Haunted by the echoes of her voice, now whispering lies and betrayals in my mind. Everywhere I looked, everything I did reminded me of her, of us, of what we had lost, of what she had destroyed. Our home, once a sanctuary of love and happiness, now felt like a mausoleum, filled with ghosts of memories, whispering accusations and regrets. The future, once bright with promise, now stretched before me, bleak, uncertain, devoid of hope. The dreams we had shared, the plans we had made, the life we had envisioned together, all shattered, reduced to ashes, leaving behind a desolate wasteland. It felt like I had lost not just a relationship, but an entire future, an entire life. Facing life became a daily struggle. Getting out of bed, going to work, interacting with people. Every interaction felt forced, hollow, lacking genuine connection. I felt like I was wearing a mask, pretending to be okay while inside I was crumbling, falling apart piece by piece. The world around me continued to move, to function, to thrive, but I felt like I was frozen in time, trapped in a perpetual state of pain and grief, unable to move forward, unable to escape the suffocating weight of heartbreak. The question of why echoed endlessly in my mind. Why her? Why me? Why us? What had I done wrong? What had I failed to see? What had I not been enough of? The self-doubt, the self-blame, the relentless questioning, it was a torturous cycle, feeding the pain, deepening the wound, hindering any possibility of healing. The betrayal felt personal, a direct attack on my worth, my value, my identity. And the question of why remained unanswered, a gaping void in the center of my shattered heart. The heartbreak was not just an emotion. It was a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual devastation. It was a complete and utter dismantling of my being, leaving me broken, lost, and adrift in a sea of pain. And the journey to recovery I knew would be long, arduous, and incredibly, excruciatingly painful. Decisions. Choices. In the aftermath of the confession, the heartbreak, the devastation, these words loomed large, heavy with consequence, demanding action even when all I wanted to do was retreat, to disappear, to escape the unbearable reality. The future of the relationship, our lives, everything hung in the balance, suspended in a precarious equilibrium, waiting for me to make a move, to tip the scales, to decide our fate. Separation. Divorce. These words echoed in my mind, stark, cold, final. They represented the end, the irreversible severing of the bond, the formal acknowledgement of the irreparable damage. The thought of it was terrifying, overwhelming, yet also, strangely liberating. Liberating from the pain, from the deception, from the constant reminder of betrayal. But also terrifying because it meant admitting defeat, acknowledging failure, dismantling the life we had built piece by piece over so many years. Reconciliation. The other option. A faint glimmer of hope in the darkness, a fragile possibility of salvaging something from the wreckage. Could we rebuild trust? Could we forgive? Could we move past this? The questions swirled in my mind, battling with the pain, the anger, the shattered trust. The idea of reconciliation felt almost impossible, a Herculean task, yet a part of me, a small, fragile part, still clung to the memories of our love, to the hope that maybe, just maybe, something could be salvaged. The difficulty in making a decision was paralyzing. Reason battled with emotion, logic clashed with instinct, hope wrestled with despair. My head told me one thing: to walk away, to protect myself, to start anew, to escape the pain. But my heart was still tangled in the memories, in the love, in the years we had shared. It whispered of forgiveness, of second chances, of the possibility of healing, however faint that possibility might be. The impact on my life was immense, regardless of the decision I made. Separation or divorce meant dismantling our shared life, dividing assets, navigating legal processes, facing the judgment of family and friends, starting over alone, rebuilding from scratch. Reconciliation, if even possible, meant a long, arduous journey of healing, therapy, confronting painful truths, rebuilding trust, and facing the constant risk of relapse, of renewed pain, of further betrayal. The conflict between reason and emotion was tearing me apart. Reason told me to be practical, to be strong, to protect myself from further hurt, to cut my losses and move on. Emotion pleaded for compassion, for understanding, for a second chance, for the faint hope of rekindling what was lost. It was a war within myself, a battle for my own soul, with no clear victor, no easy path forward. Hope and despair danced a cruel tango in my mind. Hope whispered of the possibility of healing, of forgiveness, of a stronger relationship emerging from the ashes of betrayal. Despair screamed of the impossibility of trust, of the permanence of the damage, of the inevitable repetition of pain. One moment I'd feel a flicker of optimism, a fragile belief in the power of love and forgiveness. The next, I'd be plunged into the depths of despair, convinced that all was lost, that there was no way back, no path to redemption. I sought advice from friends, from family, from therapists. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a perspective, everyone had their own experiences and biases. Some urged me to leave, to walk away, to protect my heart. Others suggested therapy, counseling, giving her a second chance, exploring the possibility of reconciliation. The conflicting advice, while well-intentioned, only added to my confusion, to my internal turmoil. Ultimately, the decision had to be mine. Mine alone to bear the weight of, mine alone to live with the consequences of. It was a choice that would define my future, shape my life, determine my path forward. And the weight of that responsibility, the enormity of that choice, was almost unbearable. I spent days, weeks, agonizing over it. Sleepless nights filled with contemplation, with introspection, with wrestling with my own demons, my own desires, my own fears. I weighed the pros and cons, I considered every angle, every possibility, every potential outcome. But there was no easy answer, no clear path, no guaranteed solution. It was a leap of faith, a gamble with my own heart, a choice between pain and uncertainty, between the known devastation of betrayal and the unknown risks of reconciliation. And in the end, the decision, whatever it would be born not of reason, not of logic, but of something deeper, something more primal, something rooted in the core of my being, a desperate attempt to navigate the wreckage and find a path, any path, towards healing and some semblance of peace. Recovery. Healing. These words, initially distant and abstract, slowly, painstakingly, began to take on meaning, to represent a possibility, a faint glimmer of light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. The decision, the choice I made regarding the relationship, was just the first step on a long and arduous journey, a journey inward, towards self-discovery, towards emotional repair, towards rebuilding a life shattered by betrayal. The mental recovery was a slow, gradual process, like emerging from a dense fog into a hazy sunlight. The obsessive thoughts, the intrusive images, the constant mental torment, they didn't vanish overnight, but they started to lessen in intensity, to become less frequent, less overwhelming. Therapy played a crucial role, providing a safe space to process my emotions, to unravel the complexities of the betrayal, to understand the dynamics of the relationship, and to develop coping mechanisms to manage the pain and the trauma. Emotional healing was even more challenging, a roller coaster of ups and downs, progress and setbacks. The raw, agonizing pain didn't disappear, but it started to become manageable. The intensity of the sorrow lessened, the sharpness of the anger dulled, the weight of the grief became slightly lighter. There were days of progress, days of feeling stronger, more resilient, more hopeful. And then there were days of relapse, Days of being overwhelmed by sadness, by anger, by despair, feeling like I was back at square one, the wound reopened, the pain as raw as ever. Seeking support was essential. Family and friends, initially hesitant, cautiously offered their support, their understanding, their presence. Sharing my story, talking about my pain, expressing my emotions, it was cathartic, liberating, a way to unburden myself, to feel less alone in my suffering. Support groups, online communities, connecting with others who had experienced similar betrayals, provided a sense of validation, of shared experience, of knowing that I wasn't alone in this journey, that others had walked this path before me and had found a way to heal. Forgiveness. A complex, multifaceted concept, initially unimaginable, almost offensive in the face of such profound betrayal. Forgiving her? Forgiving him? Forgiving myself? It felt like asking too much, like betraying my own pain, like minimizing the enormity of what had happened. But slowly, gradually, the idea of forgiveness started to shift, to evolve. Not as condoning the betrayal, not as forgetting the pain, but as a path towards my own healing, towards releasing the anger, the resentment, the bitterness that was poisoning my soul. Forgiveness not for their sake but for my own. A way to free myself from the shackles of pain, to reclaim my own peace, to move forward without being constantly burdened by the weight of the past. Acceptance. Accepting the truth, accepting the reality of what had happened, accepting the loss, accepting the changes in my life, accepting the uncertainty of the future. It wasn't about condoning the betrayal but about acknowledging it, integrating it into my narrative, understanding that it was a part of my story now, a painful chapter but not the entire book. Accepting that the past could not be changed but the future was still unwritten, still full of possibilities, still holding the potential for healing, for growth, for new beginnings. Small steps forward. Each day, each week, each month, marked by incremental progress, tiny victories, moments of resilience, sparks of hope. Rediscovering simple pleasures, reconnecting with hobbies, engaging in activities that brought joy, laughter, and a sense of normalcy. Rebuilding routines, establishing new patterns, creating a new rhythm of life, independent of the past, focused on the present, open to the future. Self-care became a priority. Nurturing my body, my mind, my spirit. Exercise, healthy eating, adequate sleep, mindfulness practices, spending time in nature, engaging in creative pursuits. These became essential tools for healing, for self-soothing, for rebuilding my inner strength and resilience. The journey of recovery was not linear. It was a winding path filled with twists and turns, ups and downs, moments of clarity and moments of confusion, periods of progress and periods of relapse. But with each step forward, however small, however hesitant, I felt a sense of reclaiming myself, of regaining control, of slowly, painstakingly, piecing together the fragments of my shattered life. And in the process I was discovering a new strength within myself, a resilience I never knew I possessed, a capacity for healing that was slowly, miraculously, starting to mend the deepest wounds of heartbreak. The pain would likely always be a part of my story, a scar etched onto my soul, but it no longer defined me. It was a reminder of what I had survived, of the strength I had found within myself, and of the possibility of healing, of recovery, of moving forward, towards a future that, while different from the one I had imagined, still held the promise of hope, of peace, and of a renewed sense of self. Lessons learned. Looking back now from a vantage point of hard-earned healing and fragile resilience, the experience, though devastating, has etched indelible lessons onto my soul, shaping my perspective on relationships, on trust, on life itself. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, they were teachers, brutal and unforgiving, but teachers nonetheless, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths, to reevaluate my beliefs, to emerge from the ashes stronger, wiser, and perhaps more compassionate. Trust. The fragile, precious commodity that shattered so completely. The lesson learned is not to become cynical, not to build walls around my heart, but to be more discerning, more aware, more attuned to the subtle signs, the early warnings, the whispers of change. To trust but to verify. To be open but not naive. To build trust slowly, deliberately, based on actions, not just words. And to understand that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to fully restore. Relationships. The complexities, the vulnerabilities, the inherent risks. The lesson learned is that even the most seemingly solid, unbreakable bonds can be fractured. That love, even deep love, is not always enough to guarantee fidelity, to prevent betrayal. To cherish the good times, to appreciate the love and connection while it lasts, but to also be prepared for the possibility of pain, of loss, of heartbreak. To communicate openly, honestly, vulnerably, to nurture the relationship actively, to never take it for granted, to recognize that relationships are living, breathing entities that require constant care and attention. Self-worth. The devastating impact of betrayal on self-esteem, on feeling inadequate, unworthy, unlovable. The lesson learned is that my worth is not determined by someone else's actions, by someone else's choices, by someone else's betrayal. My worth is inherent, intrinsic, independent of external validation. To love myself, to value myself, to believe in myself, regardless of what others do or don't do. To recognize that betrayal is a reflection of the betrayer's character, not a reflection of my own flaws or shortcomings. Forgiveness. The long, arduous journey towards letting go of anger, resentment, bitterness. The lesson learned is that forgiveness is not about condoning the wrong, not about excusing the behavior, but about freeing myself from the emotional prison of pain and anger. Forgiveness is a gift I give myself, a path towards healing, towards peace, towards moving forward without being burdened by the weight of the past. It is a process, not an event, a journey, not a destination, and it requires time, patience, and self-compassion. The future. Initially bleak, uncertain, devoid of hope, now slowly, tentatively, starting to shimmer with possibility. The lesson learned is that even after the darkest storms, the sun will eventually rise again. That even after profound loss, life goes on, and new beginnings are possible. To embrace the uncertainty, to be open to new experiences, to new connections, to new possibilities. To not be afraid to love again, to trust again, to hope again. To carry the lessons of the past but not to be defined by them. To look forward with optimism, with resilience, with a renewed sense of self, and with the unwavering belief that even after heartbreak, even after betrayal, life can still be beautiful, meaningful, and full of love. Advice for others. For those who are experiencing or may experience a similar situation, the words I offer are born from the depths of my own pain, from the crucible of my own healing. Trust your instincts. Pay attention to the subtle signs. Communicate openly and honestly with your partner. Seek help if you need it. Don't blame yourself. Prioritize your own well-being. Allow yourself to grieve. Seek support from family, friends, or professionals. Be patient with yourself. Healing takes time. Forgive yourself and eventually, perhaps, forgive others. And remember, you are not alone. Heartbreak is a universal human experience, and while the pain may feel unbearable, it is not insurmountable. You are stronger than you think. You are more resilient than you know. And you will get through this. You will heal. You will find peace. And you will, eventually, find happiness again. The future is still yours to create. Embrace it with courage, with hope, and with the unwavering belief in your own strength and your own worth. Thank you for listening to this story. We hope it offered some perspective, perhaps some comfort, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone in facing life's challenges. If you resonated with this story, or if you have your own experiences to share anonymously, please feel free to leave a comment below. Your voice matters. Remember to like, subscribe, and share if you found this story meaningful. Until next time, take care.